Inkbound is a brand new roguelike from Shiny Shoe, the creators of Monster Train. It's currently in early access, and like every other early access title, I decided to check the reviews before I jumped in. It also extremely strains this game's playability as a solo experience when there's no one else around to soak these now unavoidable attacks. Aside from the lack of a multiplayer community, the actual game was difficult to say the least. I could not for the life of me get past the second world after you beat the final boss in the first round of battles. The difficulty spiked heavily, thus my need for teammates.
After having played this in an earlier testing stage, the new amount of unavoidable damage dealt to the player is too discouraging to want to play the game much more in solo.
This seems like you're nitpicking reviews for the sake of your argument.
Shut up, you're ruining my intro! Seems like a pretty difficult game to play solo, right? Well, I'm going to show you that it can be done with every aspect currently in the game, while also giving my thoughts about the game as a whole. Let's start with my starting aspect, the Magma Miner. The Magma Miner I would describe as your jack-of-all-trades class in Inkbound. The stats you prioritize can be heavily influenced by what type of build you're going for. You can do lots of physical damage if you focus on bonk or smash, or you can put burn on your abilities and focus on magic damage. In fact, that's something that really is a huge strength of the game in general. Every aspect has at least a couple different builds that are viable, which is cool to see. Another thing that I think is great is that the boss you face at the end of the run is tied to your run quest, so depending on which quests you can or can't feasibly do changes what boss you have to fight, which I think is a great way to get players to fight all of the bosses on a regular basis. This run I'll be up against Argolith, a big octopus blob thing. One thing I will note is that the early stages prove the most fatal. Of all the times I've died, I'd say 90% of them are either in the first book or the early stages of the second book. I thought this run was going to end like that, as I got knocked down to 5 HP. But this brings me to my biggest critique I have of Inkbound. There's too much healing. There's an optional heal after every combat. The tethered shrines give you the same option. Some of the sea breaches will heal you. The carver has a heal you can buy. There's a heal after every book. There's so much healing. So if you aren't killed in a single combat, it's not very likely that you're going to die at all. The Carver's heal is probably the worst offender. I think this heal is too cost effective as is. 15 HP is like a third of your health most of the time, and it only costs 75 quilling every time you visit the Carver. I think they should either increase the price or decrease the HP you get. It could even be something like Slay the Spire's card removal, where every time you buy it, it gets more expensive on subsequent visits. Alternatively, they could just remove the heal from the Carver, except for the times when you can only go to the Carver, which I believe is only right before the final boss. This would incentivize choosing things like sea breaches or tethered shrines when looking for HP, rather than the Carver being a one-stop shop. So before I get to the Book 1 boss, I'm back above half health again. I get through him pretty easily, and I get a super lucky roll with my bonk upgrades. The thwack plus whack-a-bonk combo sets me up for a strong rest of the run.
Wait, you're set up for the rest of the run because you got a good combo on a single ability?
Well, no, but actually, yes. In this example, the Binding Ascension I got just so happens to work perfectly with the purple augment I got, but that's kinda roguelikes in general. RNGesus can giveth, and RNGesus can taketh away. Well, I guess it's more like not giveth, the game can't take anything away from you. Anyways, this Wombo combo carries me right through the second book, right to the boss. Another complaint I have is that the final book is just a hard combat, the Carver, then the boss. That's it. It's a bit lackluster, and you get 2 opportunities to heal, which makes it pretty easy to enter the final boss on full health. I would prefer it if we had to go through another book before the final boss, but that leads to a whole different balance issue since the pacing of the game is made for this length, and adding a whole nother book would extend the run by a lot, which is a whole mess, so that's probably not going to happen. The good side of this is that runs take just about an hour, usually less if playing by yourself, which I feel is a standard amount of time for a roguelike run. And speaking of, 1 down, 4 to go. Next, I'm going to go with my favorite of the aspects, the obelisk, the beefy boy of the game. Funnily enough, it isn't the most immobile class, considering one of its 3 base skills is a movement skill, which is better than the Weaver and Clairvoyant. Now, this run will be up against the Shadow of Runestone, a big rock with big hands. Something that has really kept me hooked on this game is the quest system. It just itches my monkey brain's desire to do the thing, to check that box, even if that thing just amounts to a hat or something. I do think that rewarding the player with more vestiges they can see in a run is an interesting choice. On the one hand, a lot of the unlocked vestiges are more powerful than the base ones, but on the other, adding more items to the pool reduces your chances of getting the items you want in any given run. The quests also give you the story of this game, which I find is a really nice touch considering most roguelikes have next to no story, Hades excluded. In fact, I think they kind of took a page out of Hades' book for this, considering that visiting the various NPCs during runs serves both the story and the run you're currently on. It's not quite as nuanced as Hades, considering every NPC just has a vault sitting next to them, but it's still nice that coming to these spots can serve a purpose during a normal run. Do you know what almost never serves a purpose in a normal run? Sea breaches. When given the option, I will take pretty much every other option available. Binding Empowerments in the Carver? S tier, worth it pretty much every time. Tethered Shrines and NPCs? B tier, good if I'm lacking in stats or vestiges. Sea breaches? D tier. Why would I go here when there are guaranteed benefits elsewhere? That's my biggest issue with them. There's no guarantee they will be useful. Granted, tethered shrines and NPC locations aren't guaranteed to be useful, but at least I know what I'm going to get when I go there. Sea breaches are just too much of a shot in the dark to risk getting something I don't need when I could take a different path and be much more likely to get the thing I'm looking for. Maybe if every path wasn't clearly spelled out for you, it would force the player to interact with these, thus making them a tool that the player has to utilize correctly in order to win. And I don't think the events themselves are flawed either. I just think that I, as well as probably other players, would rather take the safe bet in a game of chance. Oh, hey jazz hands. Why you hitting yourself? Why you hitting yourself? 2 out of 5. Let's see who's next. Now, the interesting thing about the next 3 aspects. I hadn't played them until I attempted this. Yep, these are all going to be the first runs I've ever played with each of them, which probably shows how simple this challenge was. Now, granted, all 5 of these were done on unranked runs, so I'm sure it gets more difficult as you climb the ranked ladder, and the game is in early access, so I'd imagine some balance passes will be made before the game launches to tune the difficulty. Oh god damn it, Weaver! I was just explaining how easy it was. I guess we'll talk about the Weaver next. So, the Weaver is kind of the support of the group, and like you just saw, was the only of the aspects that I died on while making this video. To be fair, I made a poor decision choosing to go up against Janus the Malformed early in the run, since the Weaver does lots of small damage early in a run, and that makes Janus angry. A lot of the upgrades the Weaver gets to their bindings add various status effects to the enemy, so this is probably the trickiest of the aspects to get a coherent build going with, and is the hardest to win with solo due to the inherently low damage output and minimal shielding early in the run. That being said, I still did it. Here's me beating up Cinder, Big Bird's ugly, gooey cousin. I do like the boss design in this game, especially the final bosses. The mini-bosses are generally just clear ads hit boss, but each of them at least has a unique mechanic attached to them, like getting stronger with each enemy you kill, or shielding enemies and increasing the damage you take. The final bosses have more interesting mechanics in my opinion. The Shadow of Runestone has a large amount of damage resistance. It also has giant hands that will sometimes do a big punch attack. If you aim that attack at the big head, It will remove the damage resistance for a turn, as well as doing a bit of damage. Once you get him to his third phase, the damage resistance is removed permanently, but hitting the head with his own hands causes him to take extra damage for a turn. The adds in this fight are almost inconsequential, and I tend to ignore them most of the time. Cinder adds stacks of Cinder Pox, which is essentially poison to you each turn, and you take damage based on how many stacks you currently have. Killing the tree dude spawns a giant mushroom that cleanses the effect at the cost of 1 will, but the mushroom disappears a turn after you defeat the tree dude. So it adds a bit of a timing element to killing him. Argolith spawns a bunch of tentacles, and damaging the tentacles damages him. Attacking the head itself does 50% less damage, which I think is a bit of an odd choice, so you're pretty much playing Whack-A-Tentacle the whole fight. I really think you should be rewarded, not punished, for hitting the head, since he spawns new tentacles every turn, and each tentacle is a source of damage, so unless you have absolutely insane damage or shielding, you'd be overwhelmed by tunneling on the head. But maybe that becomes more problematic when there's 4 people, so I guess Whack-A-Tentacle it is. Now, I'm going to group the Clairvoyant and Mosscloak together, not because I think they're not worth talking about, but because both of them are very strong solo picks. Also because I got insane binding combos on both. The Mosscloak is the ranged physical damage class, and the Clairvoyant is the ranged magical damage class, and I would put both of them squarely in the main DPS category. The Clairvoyant can take more supportive augments for their bindings, but most of the time I'd build damage. The Mosscloak has no such augments, so they are all about doing tons of damage. Now, I broke the Mosscloak because I got the Lethal Burst Ascension for the Flurry binding, and then immediately reduced the cost to 0, making it so that every time I kill an enemy with Lethal Burst, I can cast it again for free, giving me almost an infinite combo. Pretty busted. The Clairvoyant was a bit more of a slow build, but yeah, that damage is pretty stupid. So I took the Aura Surge Ascension, which deals more damage for every aura. I only had 2 auras at the time of picking it up, but with later augments I was able to get up to 5 auras, which made my Aura Surge deal a frankly ridiculous amount of damage. Nothing can damage you if you vaporize everything. So yeah, that's Inkbound completed solo with every aspect in my sort of review of the game as a whole. I hope you found it helpful, and I can't wait until the end of August for the next major update. Hello, Present Austin here. This video took long enough to release that the August update has already come out, and I don't feel like re-recording this entire video, so I will summarize the changes made here. The healing has been reduced pretty much across the board, so good on you, Shiny Shoe, though it's still too much. They've also made ranked runs longer, which I think is great. The Battle Pass is more expensive now at 1,000 shinies, or $10, but they did add more shinies to the free track of the Battle Pass to compensate, so my evaluation still stands on that. The new character's fun, and I've completed several runs with them solo as well. Alright, update done. Okay, that's all I've got for this video.